Hello friends, and welcome back to my channel. Today I am finally broaching a question that I get asked literally all the time and have been getting asked for years and just have kind of avoided talking about. And that is tipping. Should you tip your piercer? How much should you tip your piercer? How should you format your tip? All of the etiquette that goes into tipping when you're at a studio. So my refrain when asked about tipping is always, tipping is never expected, but always appreciated. And I think that refrain rings true for a lot of folks in the industry, just not in the way people always think it does. See, tipping is a discussion that comes with quite a bit of nuance, and I'm going to do my best today to try and explain from both perspectives kind of what goes into tipping and give you my best advice as a professional body piercer about how I would suggest tipping. Now to start, we're going to look at things from the piercer's perspective, but please stay for this full video because we will be also looking at things from the client perspective in a little bit. Now obviously in an ideal world, studios would pay all of their piercers a living wage to where they didn't need to survive off of tips to make their income, make ends meet, and cover bills. In reality, this is not so much the case, and while there are some studios that do pay a solid baseline living wage, I would be willing to say that at least 90% of studios, honestly that number is probably still low, rely on tips pretty heavily to make piercer pay, and by extension front of house pay typically, something where it's livable and affordable and at times thrivable. And a lot of that is happening through tips. As someone who's guesting and traveling right now, one of the things that I talk to studios about is how much money I can expect to make on a guest spot. And I have noticed overwhelmingly when studios let me know how much I can anticipate to make, they give me a number that sounds really, really good at first. And then when I follow up and ask, okay, and how much of that is wage and how much of that is tip, about 50% of what they're letting me know that I'm going to make is coming from my tips. Which means, yes, I'm making an amount that I feel very, very comfortable with, but half of that income is coming from the client. Now that is starting to change. A lot of studios are moving in the direction of doing better hourly pay, better benefits, taking better care of their piercers as a baseline before tips. But it would be incorrect of me to make folks believe that piercers can make the living they make and survive off of what they make purely based on what they charge for their services. And that is kind of no different than hair salons and nail techs, all folks where you go and you are receiving a service and it's generally considered common courtesy, at least here in America, to tip them for that service. And yes, it is very much still the same way for tattoo artists. So I would say that if you are able to, and we'll get more into that later, if you're planning on getting a piercing or a tattoo or your hair done or your nails, I would try and budget a tip into that. Now when it comes to tipping, there's different ways that you can tip at a studio. Most studios, when they're ringing you out, have an option tip line that's on the full % of the sale. And that is the way that I would say the majority of clients end up tipping and the majority of studios end up doing things. And I think that tends to be relatively fair. If you're spending $50 or $60 on your piercing and you had a great experience, you can tip 20 or 30% on that. If you maybe didn't have the greatest experience but you still want to do something, you can tip 10 or 15% on that. And that does mean that some clients who spend larger amounts do end up tipping larger amounts. I have had clients who have come and spent thousands of dollars with me, spent hours working with me, and had a really, really amazing experience with what we were doing. And so even on a ticket that large, they still opted to do a 20% tip or a 30% tip. It is absolutely not unheard of if a client is coming in and spending $1,000, $2,000, $5,000 on jewelry, on services, spending a couple hours with a piercer, getting everything correct, for them to tip a couple hundred, even up to a couple $1,000, depending on what they're getting done. And I think if you're someone who's coming into a piercing studio and you can afford to spend like that, if you're coming in and you know that you want gold, you want genuine stones, you have a budget that's up in 4 or even 5 figures for what you're doing for the day, be it piercing or tattoo, if you can afford to spend like that, I do think that it is often polite to tip your artist in a way that reflects that. And to be fair, I do think if you're the type of person who already has a budget set aside, you're planning to come in and drop $2,000-$3,000 on jewelry and piercings, you're planning on spending 2 or 3 hours with a piercer, really carefully styling and curating things, sometimes even designing custom jewelry, all that stuff. I do think it is reasonable for someone who can afford to spend that much on the service to tip a couple hundred, even up to $1,000 if they really feel like they had amazing service. Now, on the flip side, and this is where we start to get into the client perspective, I also understand that there are some clients who simply cannot afford to tip even on the full transaction. Folks who are lower income, folks who are minors and underage, people who are still in school, folks for whatever reason, they simply can't afford, even if they're getting basic jewelry and a simple piercing, to tip on the whole service. And that's okay. I don't expect people like that to give me the money that they would spend on food that week on a tip. If you're planning on getting a piercing and you know that money is tight for you and you don't have a huge budget, budgeting in $10, maybe even $20 for a tip is perfect. And if you're unsure of how to do the math to figure out exactly how much to give, I would say look at the service that you're getting done and look how much time it's taking. If you're coming in and you're getting just a simple basic helix piercing, you're only spending about 20 to 30 minutes with your piercer, and it's a pretty quick, straightforward process, and you can't afford too much, and then maybe the piercing fee is like $25 to like $40, I would say like tipping like 10 or 15 is totally reasonable if that's all you can afford. However, if you're planning to come in and see a piercer for like a really advanced or specialty service, like a complicated genital piercing or paired high nostrils, your piercer is going to spend an hour or an hour and a half with you. They're going to take a lot of time, put in a lot of effort to do this for you. Even if things are a little bit tight, I would see if you can try and budget like $30 or $40 for a tip. And I'm saying this as someone who literally worked for no money. I worked for free during my apprenticeship. I did not get paid for many years. And when I did scrounge up enough in like random tips that I got to do things like get my hair done just to feel good about myself, I still always tried to budget to tip because I was taking that person's time. That person was providing a service for me wherever possible. Now, that being said, it is simply not always financially feasible for every single client to tip. Would it be great as a service worker if everyone could? Absolutely. But as someone who has also been on the other side of this and been a client in a really tough position, in a really tight place financially, sometimes I had to choose between getting the piercing or being able to afford the tip. I don't frankly think that anyone should not get a piercing that they want simply because they can't afford to give a monetary tip. I understand what it's like to be in that situation where you really have barely enough money to get the piercing itself with the simplest, most affordable piece of jewelry the studio offers, and even just $5 or $10 for a tip is too much for you. The good news is there's so many things you can do that are still in the spirit of tipping that aren't leaving a monetary tip. If someone was coming to me for a piercing and they were in a really tight financial situation, A, I would not want them to overextend themselves just to leave me a tip. B, I've had people leave me $1 and $2 tips, and while I appreciate the effort to just give something, if money is that tight for you, please do not worry about it. If that is the case, you can do other things that support the person who's providing you that service, that support your piercer, and still kind of tip them in showing them gratitude for the service you gave. And the biggest thing I would say is leaving a really great review. Reviews can absolutely make or break people's decision to go into a business, and especially reviews that name a piercer or the front of house person that you worked with by name lets other people looking for them online show that they are going to provide a great experience, that they're a good piercer, and that you enjoyed your time. So let's say you are working on a really tight budget, you just don't have a lot of money for piercing, and you're like not really sure what to do. You're like, oh, I can barely afford to tip, but this piercer is doing all this work and these services for me. Leave a great review. Take the time to sit down for 10 minutes and write a really great review, mention the piercer by name, talk about all the things that you enjoyed, post pictures of your piercings if you have like a good cute selfie or things like that. Great reviews are so powerful in service industries like ours, and they're an amazing way to show a piercer gratitude for a service that isn't monetary. If you're not sure where to leave a review for your piercer, you can always message them and ask them if they have any preferred sites for reviews to be left on, or if they have any preferred ways of having a review written and done. For example, I'm currently traveling, so I don't exactly have like a studio page on Google or Yelp or anywhere for folks to leave reviews, but I do post reviews on my website, and I do like to post longer format, more thorough reviews, and I am always looking for clients who are willing to write a longer review of my services like that. And honestly, if a client wanted to sit down and take like 20 minutes to write a really beautiful, really long review about their experiences getting pierced with me, not just the technical aspect, but like the bedside manner, how the piercings made them feel, the whole healing process, that would be more valuable to me than like quite a lot of monetary tips. Those types of reviews are so amazing for me to have on my website, and a lot of my clients tell me they really love reading them, so I'm always looking for that. So reviews are such a great way to still show your piercer a gratuity for the service they've provided. Another great way is to make your money go thoughtfully. I have a lot of clients who can't really afford more than, let's say, maybe $5 or $10 as a tip when it comes to piercings, but they are sometimes coming to me and getting like many $100s of services, or services that take an incredibly long time. And rather than spend hundreds of dollars on what they're getting that day and leave me like a $5 tip, they will message me ahead of time and be like, hey, do you have a coffee order? Could I bring you a coffee? Is there an energy drink or a snack that you like to have at work? A lot of times clients know that I'm not really the biggest coffee drinker, but I do have 4 wild cats, and I've had lots of clients bring me tiny, affordable little cat toys. And I know it's crazy because it's the same amount of money, but if I do like a $400 service and get a $5 tip, I don't necessarily feel bad about that, but sometimes it is a little bit of a bummer. But if I do a $400 service and I get like a $4 cat toy as a tip, I'm fucking stoked. I'm so excited that the client took the time to be like, Lynn has a lot of cats. They would probably like cat toys. I'm going to make this $4 go way further and get them this cute little toy for the cat, which is very thoughtful, and it shows that they took time, and it shows that they understood. Maybe they couldn't, give me a big financial tip for my services, but it's so meaningful, and it's the thought behind it. In that same vein, I have had clients bring me like artwork and drawings that they did as a tip. I've had clients crochet me cute like dolls and hats and little things. I have this little zombie bee, a zombie if you will, that a client crocheted for me that my cat Sushi is like literally obsessed with. To the person who made this for me, I tried to keep it really nice and safe, but Sushi literally loves it. It's one of her favorite toys, so it is hers now. But she loves it so much, and I get so happy every time I see her playing with it or laying with it. I've had clients write me very heartfelt notes about what their piercing experiences meant to me, and thank you notes, and give them to me, and I save literally every one of them, and they make me cry a lot when I get them because they're so sweet and thoughtful. I've had clients who bring me baked goods. Alexis from Nashville is the OG. She is the winner. Everything she baked was literally so delicious. She brought us like cinnamon rolls and vegan muffins for Rob, and getting a baked good puts a smile on everyone's face. Like, this is the point that when Alexis came in, the tattoo artist would see her on the schedule and be like, is Alexis gonna bring food this time? Are we gonna get like a snack? Like, you've Pavlov dogs them because they just knew Alexis. She bakes. These are all wonderful ways to still show a piercer gratuity and kind of tip them for their service that aren't financial. And when I was younger, when I was getting pierced at, 17, 18, 19, and especially once I was in my apprenticeships and I was not being paid to apprentice, but I was still working full time, I still liked to go and get pierced by other piercers in the area, but I could not afford to leave a tip that I felt like was deserving of their services. But what I could do was bring baked goods. I could leave really, really stellar reviews. I made sure to come back and let piercers get really great portfolio photos of work that healed. Like, I tipped them with my time to like take the train into the city, walk to the studio, and be like, look, I healed everything. I super deep cleaned it this morning. It's beautiful. Let me let you get some really good healed photos. all things that I feel like evoke this spirit of tipping, which is showing a gratuity for the service that you received. All of that said, if you do not want to tip or cannot afford to tip and don't feel like doing any of the extras, I'm not going to tell you that you are bad or that you shouldn't get a piercing or a tattoo or whatever you want. That is totally your prerogative, and I have some clients who I've worked on for many years who have never tipped me once, and I've done dozens of hours of work for them, and it is what it is. I am not here to tell anyone that they have to tip, and quite frankly, we shouldn't have to tip. There should be higher wages. Piercers and service workers should be better taken care of. That includes waitresses, chefs, hairstylists, nail techs, estheticians, you name it. We should just take care of these folks better. Unfortunately, the reality is here in America, we don't. So if you are planning on getting these services done and either you have a really great experience while you're there or you like the person that you're getting the service with, I would say that it is polite to do something. But I think we get caught up in our minds too much about tipping always being a financial thing, and people really stress out about that. I would rather see people view tipping as a gratuity that is reasonable for the service provided and reasonable for the person receiving the service. Have any other thoughts about tipping or any questions related to that you'd like to see me talk about? Please let me know in the comments down below. And if you are a piercer or an apprentice and you have a favorite tip that stands out to you, whether it is a monetary tip that was just really game-changing for you, or like an incredibly sweet and thoughtful, totally non-monetary tip, I would love to hear about those too. I love to hear those cool stories. Oh, and also if you want to see me do a video about the weirdest and most unique tips I've ever received as a piercer, I've got a lot of them and I think that could be really fun. So let me know that too. As always, it was great sitting down and hanging out with y'all. I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day, and I can't wait until we chat soon.